Welcome back, everybody. This is Night Flight, and today we are going to welcome Enna Reittort. And she is an anthropologist. She is an author. She, among other things, wrote the book Krivda, Godtrix Against the Matrix. And she also is a past life regressionist. And our topic today will have the focus of blood sacrifices. But before we go there, welcome, Enna. And yeah, lovely to have you. And I'm really looking forward to this.
Thank you so much, Judith. It's a pleasure to be talking with a kindred spirit. I already know that from our 10-minute banter before the conversation started, and from what little sampling I've been able to do of your guests. And yeah, it's clear that you don't beat around the bush. You go straight for the for the main points.
Yeah.
So and this is and I'm pleased to say this because we need this so much nowadays. There's so much noise. There's so much conversation going around the same things over and over again. We need to have these conversations that go straight to the point. So kudos to you.
Yeah. So what sparked your interest in this entire field? I mean, okay, you are an anthropologist, so that probably set you on a certain path. And but in Krivda, I mean, you go very deep into etymology, what the words really mean. And so how did that happen? I always ask this when a new guest comes on.
Sure. Well, I mean, Krivda, okay, I'm an anthropologist. I became an anthropologist sort of, halfway in life out of my other pursuits. And the interesting thing is that I was looking for a topic for my MA, and then this topic grew further into what would become my PhD. But I never really wanted to be academically, involved. On the other hand, doing the academic stuff really did make me sharpen the ability to think, the ability to do research, and to feel into, to go into what other people's research was really talking about. There's the surface level. And why did this happen? It's because life, or whatever, or my past lives, or whatever, sent me for my research to an obscure part of West Bengal and Bangladesh, where I became initiated in a grassroots esoteric movement that has existed for centuries, and that calls itself the human path. And in the country on earth that has the greatest number of millions of gods and goddesses, these people are emphatically no god, no priests, no religion. Everything is the quest of the human being for what it is to be a full human being. So of course, I'm saying this in Western words. They don't express it that way. But no religion, no God, no priests. They are after the direct connection between their embodied consciousness and the greater consciousness that we all are. And so, I went there, and with every new trip, it was increasingly hellish, because I could see that this was a very precious, a very ancient wisdom path of the little people, not the high caste people, the little people, and which made it even more precious for me. But they were being, in the period that I was there, I witnessed the end of their wisdom really holding them together, and globalization, which was invading their way of life in every possible way, with the advent of the god of money. And they could not understand how money had become a god, because they immediately, I mean, instinctively, they interpreted this, the monetarization of everything, where life had been mainly a natural, nature-based economy with very little use of money. All of a sudden, everything was monetized, and it was so quick, so sudden, they just couldn't make head or tail of it. And so, I witnessed, and I mean, I got initiated, but without any formalities. You don't, here again, this is a little people's thing. It's not, you don't have all sorts of big ceremonies and things like that. Little by little, as you talk with them and you start practicing some of the things that they teach you, there is a certain degree of wisdom that starts percolating inside you, and they recognize it. And so, overall, I was involved with them for 10 years. And that really, it modified me completely. There was no way I could go back to the West after that. So that was one part of it. I think this, I didn't know what am I going to do with this thing, for the rest of my life, because I could not stay with them forever. They were falling apart and there was nothing I could do about it. I tried, but, I really had to leave when they would come and prostrate themselves in front of me and say, Mother, save us. These were the people who had taken me in, from a position of understanding that they were richer than I was because of their wisdom and because of how it enabled them to conduct their lives. So there was no way I was going to be, there was no way I could save them. There was no way I could pull apart the capitalist globalist system that was betraying them. And like all great, knowledge systems, wisdom systems, well, they go under and they'll sprout up again in a new way. But when COVID hit, all of a sudden, everything that I had observed over my lifetime, and, I've lived in a good number of countries, everything somehow came together. And the fact that I had that initiation into a truly human path, I immediately saw that there was a religious blueprint in what was happening to us under COVID. And, I could see that commentators were saying, oh, yes, the priests of vaccinations and, the gods of medicine, they were using these religious terms, but they didn't know where they came from. They were instinctive, but they were not grounded in a consciousness of what it was all rooted in. And so, okay, then I started writing the book. And I could, we start with, the Anunnaki, and then the ET Yahweh God. And then, there's the big piece, which is accessible to us with the Christian religion. And then, analyzing how the Christian religion did its falsifications and installed its powers, I could see all the elements of a structure. And then you simply take those elements of a structure and you can apply them to the religion of money, to the religion of science, to the religion of medicine, and now to the religion of what I call the techno-mind God, with, our so-called artificial intelligence and transhumanism and all those things. So there is a completely, self-evident continuity of all these things throughout 5 or 6 millennia.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so clear to me that, well, okay, I mean, I have to write a book. Whereas after having done my PhD a long time ago, I'd promised I'm never writing again. So, okay, I did Krivda. And, well, people who read it, it strikes a chord with them. It's, when other people start seeing that, oh yes, of course, there is this religious continuity. And, we are fooled about the nature of religion. We're fooled about the nature of spirituality. We're fooled about the nature of materialism. We're fooled about, gods and angels and salvation and primordial sin, original sin. And, basically everything is. But once you see this continuity, you see how we're being fooled right now also. It's exactly the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, I have.
So apart, yeah. So
Sorry.
apart from that, there's another clarification I need to give you is that I was born in a diplomat's family. And so, I've lived with multiple languages throughout my life, which means that, I marinate in the words that go with concepts in a particular culture that have no equivalent in Western languages, and vice versa, which means that, then I have to go into the inner meaning of words and even the way they sound, which is why I use this title Krivda, which, doesn't mean anything to anybody in the West. And even to certain Russians, it's a slightly outmoded word. But Krivda, just that the sound of that word, it gave me a kind of energy to do the writing of that whole book through all the horrors, because that's the other part of it. It's, we have to be clear about all the horrors that have been inflicted on the human species for all these millennia by the different religious systems. And it's not pretty. It's really, really pretty. Many times as I was writing the book, I would be crying torrents. So it was also, a cathartic exercise for me, as it is for some of the readers. Those people who don't read it only intellectually, when they receive it at a deeper human level, it's cathartic.
Yeah.
So there we are.
There is some sound on your end. That it sounds a little bit as if not typing, but there's coming this yeah, maybe
there are birds chirping in the background. Perhaps if I
no, it's not birds.
I didn't put my my bad. I didn't put my microphone in front of my mouth.
Okay,
is that better?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay. So sorry. I get carried away with the substance and I forget about the details.
No, now that we have that out of the way, you just mentioned something that I have been saying for a long, long time. Stay away from savior programs. And I don't care what it is. Is it the alien savior, the political savior, the alien savior? Usually, even if I smell a hint of savior program, I stay away from it right away. And honestly, I have to say, over the years, it has kept me sane. And I didn't have, for instance, when QAnon came on the stage, yeah, my goodness. In the very beginning, I didn't know what QAnon was. So I tuned in, I listened to it, and I said, okay, we have a savior program. Okay, book closed, moving on. And would you say, yeah, that is an important step to get rid of?
Absolutely. And this is what frightens me about, there are so many people in the resistance who are, staunch believers in some kind of, God or Christ who is, going to save us. As long as we show that we're brave and virtuous, we're going to be saved. So, no, I mean, if anything, whatever it is, to me, there is a Christ principle, which is basically the human principle, the actual real human principle. And, the essence of what Jesus taught, if he was really there ever, was, you can do exactly the same as me. That's all. It's as simple as that. So Yeah, no, I mean, and plus what, I don't know if one has been through difficult life situations where there was nobody there to protect you. Well, you just get used to not having a savior. And yeah, it's I look at I listen to people who are in the savior program, and I'm always absolutely amazed. Yeah, I don't listen to that kind of podcast all the time, but once in a while to try and see if that discourse is changing, if there's a little bit more self-responsibility coming on the scene, because this very strong tendency in North America, because they have absolutely no idea about the history of their Bible. They have no idea about the history of the Inquisition. They have no idea about the war of, the church against nature and against basically, the feminine. So, in God we trust is really, it's a very pernicious program, and it is a problem that it is so important in that country, which plays a major role in world affairs and in exopolitical affairs too. So, yeah.
Yeah. And of course, over the years, we had a lot of, let's say, wars because of, my God is stronger than yours, and
Yeah.
your religion is bogus, and that is why we are going to wipe you out. And if you do not, switch to our religion, then you are a bad person. So in general, what religion brought over humanity is so atrocious in its entirety that, but somehow people have a tendency to stick with it. Why do you think that is?
Well, the program is so very deep, it has been installed in us through violence. There is violence that is applied physically, and it's through the body that the programming starts, and through the body, the subconscious is going to register the trauma, and the body and the mind is going to, start operating to avoid further trauma of that type. So, there is the traumatization, and together with it, they give you the promise of you're going to be saved. So, you're being victimized by trauma to make you hurt like crazy, so that you can no longer use your mind rationally, and then they give you the cookie. Like, okay, you follow this system, and you'll be safe, you'll be saved, and it's okay. So, it's the trap. It's the trap where you're victimized on both sides. You are made into an objective victim, and then you're a victim of the savior program, which means that you're never going to look for how it is that you can save yourself, assuming that you need to save yourself, because it's about saving your soul at the expense of your body. And if you save your soul, well, perhaps your body will be safe also, kind of thing. I mean, there's this very treacherous sort of melange with the polarization of soul against body, and the traumatization of the soul via the body. Because that's the other thing, is that the soul, a lot of people, who say, yes, of course I have a soul. And, well, they can do whatever they want to me, but my soul will just fly away when they kill me. Oh, the soul flies away with the imprint of the emotional trauma of what happened to your body. So it's not that simple, because we are way more complex, way more multi-layered, than most people understand. It's not just the soul and the body, but it has been reduced to that in our, mental and emotional programming. So they did an expert job of doing this programming, and it is so deeply, deeply entrenched that, okay, when you become atheist, you no longer believe in religion and God. Well, you're still going to be looking for salvation in money, having plenty of disposable money, and or, having power over other people as a boss, and or, well, nowadays, finding your salvation in the machine realm, in the virtual realm. There are loads of people, another variation of that is this new thing that is all over the place about actually we're living in an illusion. They've taken, the concept, the Indian concept of Maya, and Maya is way more complex than illusion. Illusion is just one of those easy encapsulations, like dharma and karma are, they're boiled down to very simplistic encapsulations in the Western mind. But, basically, the idea is that on this earth, we are living in an illusion. We're just avatars in the equivalent of a video game. And so, okay, let's just wait our time out, as if we're serving a sentence in a, what is deemed to be a prison planet. And then we'll be free, easy. I don't know. When I touch a tree, it's kind of real. If we've been enclosed in such a masterfully created illusional reality, then you have to also believe that we have nothing to do in interaction with the natural realm. We have nothing to do in terms of learning from the water element, the fire element, the earth element, the air element. We have, all the discoveries of people like Tesla and all those people, that was all an illusion too. Everything is an illusion then. But, that's another way out. That's another sort of quasi-savior program whereby, okay, we're living in an illusion. It's all fake. And this is, the better for us to integrate the virtual reality that they are imposing on us now.
Yeah.
And, for that, they've also instilled in, most humans on Earth who are now, developed and urban and educated, a fear of nature. There's a mosquito, there's a spider, there's a snake. Like,
yeah. And
save me from nature.
Yeah. And I also find that people who convert to atheism, many times, as you said, they have other gods, like money, like scientism, what we have seen the last 3 years. And that it's usually not that they are completely free of these belief systems. It's they just switched into another realm.
Yeah. And the other aspect of it, Judith, is that it's very much the conditioning of the mind. There again, because I've had the privilege of living amongst grassroots people for the past 20 years in Asia, their minds don't work like ours. And they don't have an arrogance of the mind over the rest of who we are and what we are. And, there is the way our minds have been programmed in the modern West, especially the modern urban West, it's absolutely phenomenal, because the mind is so well programmed that it will not see its own pitfalls. It will not see its own deceit of its own self. So, of course, I'm an atheist because I don't believe in all that, bullshit religion. It's much more rational to be an atheist. Okay, but you do have rituals, and you do have, don't you see that you have other sort of, behaviors that betray a quasi-religious thing. Oh, no, 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 no. I'm not like that. I'm not like that. You know, and then sometimes they'll tell you, they'll tell you that, yes, well, I do have a particular addiction to this, that, and the other. Ah, okay. Well, perhaps that has to do with, some kind of not directly religious in the classical way, but, religion as an occult trap that most humans are not equipped to decipher. And to be able to spot that in oneself, and I say this for myself too, to be able to spot the ways in which that trap works in your mind, so that you can start deciphering how your own mind works against you and even against itself. It's really quite something. But I keep seeing that, the absolutely overwhelming majority of especially educated modern people, the more educated you are, the more the mind is a master of deceit for its own perpetuation in the form it's being programmed, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes absolute sense to me. In your book, at the very beginning, I read an interesting statement that the gods envy us. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? Because I think you're correct, but maybe I have other reasons for that.
Well,
So
it'll be interesting to hear your reasons. Well, basically, the gods, they have this they are not immortal. Not a single god, of any pantheon. They are not, contrary to what God-loving people believe, or monotheistic people believe, the supreme, whatever it is not God, because it cannot possibly be named. So,
yeah.
let's be clear that, whether you put a capital G or a non-capital G on the word God, gods are mortal, but they have very, 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 very long time spans, unlike us. But this means that they are trapped in the identity that they have as gods and the kind of function that they fulfill as gods in the overall order and disorder of things. They don't evolve, which means they keep doing. I mean, you look at the different gods in Greek mythology. Well, they all keep doing the same bloody thing. Each one of them has its own identity and agenda. It keeps doing the same bloody thing all the time. So they don't evolve. And they don't really, they don't have the urge, nor the necessity, nor the pleasure of learning like humans do. In the space of even a short lifetime of under 100 years, we get to change. I mean, I look back on my several decades behind me. I mean, the path that I've already, traveled is more than, more than any one of those gods can claim. And that's just one lifetime. So we can cover a hell of a journey in one lifetime that they don't through one hell of a, lifetime of several thousand years. And because they're immortal, they are afraid of death. Death to them is the worst thing that can happen to them, because in their position as gods, they have power that we don't have as humans. So they're stuck in their 5-star hotel, basically. They don't have the luxury of being a bum, of being a homeless person, having to navigate the streets as a homeless person. Whereas, who knows, any one of us humans may have to navigate all sorts of situations whereby we have all sorts of experiences that help us. I'm not going to say learn lessons, because I don't I don't think it's just purely that utilitarian, like you learn lessons and then you get a degree. That's not it. But we have these experiences that sculpt the essence of who we are. And we bring that essence back, into the greater realms when we go disembodied. And, that's going to be part of what we bring back, to whatever next incarnation we're going to have. So, we are evolutionary in a very huge way and not in a Darwinian way, whereas the gods don't have that. And, I'm pretty sure they don't have the sorrows that we have, but they also don't have the laughter and the joys that we have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this is why they impose so much pain on us, because that's the only way for them to extract stuff from us that can feed them energy.
Exactly. And would you say that they are lacking a certain, let's say ethics, morality, a sound mind with their ways, how they are conducting themselves, and how they force certain things upon humanity?
Oh, definitely. I mean, this was definitely the case with, the the Elohim, the Yahweh character, and it was definitely, a part of the New Testament agenda. But what I think people do not, if we are looking at this extremely perverse sort of game between the gods and humans, the victimized humans, the whole business of Jesus, some people say that, okay, he was an ascended master who came back, or like a bodhisattva, and he came back to, teach humans and to do good things among the people. Be that as it may, whether that is true or not, the fact is that over 2 millennia of Christians believing in the goodness of this character, Jesus, humans have created an egregore of ethic value. So there is this egregore, humans who have faith in a benevolent God, they create the egregore of that benevolent God, which they can turn to, for protection. And because it's a powerful egregore, it does protect them. So it works both ways. And, this is a very interesting thing that most people don't talk about. There are the gods out there that come and impose upon humans. But then as this imposition evolves over time, humans start to negotiate. They negotiate the arrangement that they have with the gods. So, even Yahweh, as would be apparent from the way that story evolved, Yahweh initially was, completely and exclusively cruel with his chosen people. And then eventually he realized that it was too harsh on them. And so that's when, he gave his 10 commandments, which they should apply amongst themselves. So they should start being ethical amongst themselves, but still continue being very, very nasty, and obey Yahweh's bloodthirsty orders in respect of other people. But at least there was already the beginning of a more ethical thing within, the Jewish or the Israelites, or whoever they were, the Hebrews. I'm not sure at this point, with all the research that's been going on and is being revealed, I'm not even sure what these people should be called. But anyway, the so-called chosen people. So, over time, there is this interesting, development of a counter force, which, the humans will emanate this more ethical, more positive egregore that superimposes upon that, not so nice guy or gal that was there before, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So who are the Elohim in your understanding?
Well, they are a bunch of essentially, colonizers, not from this planet, who took over from the Anunnaki. I'm no specialist on these matters. The anthropologist has used the work of others, huh? And so, they came and they colonized that whole area of the Near and Middle East. And they sort of, shared the territory amongst themselves. And some of them were less nasty. Some of them were more nasty. And it seems Yahweh was the nastiest of all of them. That's as much as I can say. And it seems, from Yahweh at any rate, that there was the inheritance of some of the very nasty old customs of some of the old Mesopotamian gods. From a time when, the concept of religion did not yet exist. Our concept of religion has emerged in the West. I'm not even sure that there was the concept of religion in the old Hebrew, in the pre-Christ period. There's, the relationships between this El and his so-called chosen people, and the increasing power of the high priests to manipulate the story and the relationship between the God and the people. So, what did they call this a religion? I don't know. But the thing that we understand as religion, in the West, really takes shape with the New Testament and with the imperial agenda behind it. So the Elohim, well, not nice guys. I think, did they really try to do genetic tinkering with Adam? Is it they, or did they take over or usurp that role or claim to do that when it does seem that it was actually done by the Anunnaki? There's, I think, enough research that seems to point to that quite clearly. Were the Elohim equally, talented and equally scientific? They look more like colonizers. So I don't think that they had much of that in them. So,
So
beyond,
Yahweh would be one of the, I don't know how to put this, more powerful Elohim, one of the
I don't think so. I think he was, it seems that the piece of land and territory that were allotted to him were not the most desirable in that area. And so he was the most warlordish of the Elohim. I mean, from what the stories say. And so he had his chosen people, become bloodthirsty killers and, go and kill whole tribes, whole clans, whole villages, whole cities, eradicate them down to the very last, keep a few virgin girls for his own consumption, and, make sure that everything else was killed in the most barbaric fashion. He seems to be quite clearly the nastiest of the lot. Since his chosen people, as soon as they had a chance, they would turn to another of the Elohim who was, somewhat nicer or less cruel.
Yeah. And yet they got stuck with him in their scriptures.
Well, that's thanks to the priests. The big thing in, the problem with religions is that you've got these middlemen, the priests, who claim to be the only holders of a direct connection to the Godhead or the Godheads, the only authorized interpreters of the wishes of the Godheads. They abolish the natural, direct relationship of a human with his or her natural sense of transcendence. It's natural to us to have that spiritual connection. So the greatest trick of all has been for the priests to usurp this relationship with us, and thus to have dominion over us. And then you see that dominion. It's interesting to see how, over history, there's been the alliance between the high priests and the secular rulers, the kings, and the way it would sometimes work very harmoniously, and other times it would be, a great tug of war between the so-called spiritual and so-called secular power. And, how it worked out differently in different times of history and across, different lands. It's very, very fascinating. But when you see that tug of war, well, you know that you're in a trap.
Yeah. And I have to say that especially Christianity, and I know that the message has been manipulated.
Sorry.
And yeah, it doesn't matter. Has been manipulated and tinkered with, but we also have to acknowledge that some of the most horrific wars and behavior came out of Christianity, be it the Inquisition, be it the burning of the witches, be it the Crusades, and what have you. I mean, the list is really long. So for such an allegedly peace-loving religion, yeah, the rap sheet is speaking against that.
Very much so, very much so. But, this is where I like, because that's the other thing. In the book Krivda, I'm constantly trying to pick out the human factor that is not talked about in history. And to my mind, the fact that over the centuries, humans who've been forced to believe in that God, they've been forced to convert, they've been forced to, set aside their nature-based, so-called animistic or pagan beliefs that were in fact much, much more efficient in terms of, the relationship between humans and the spirit world. They managed to create this positive egregore of, the figure of Jesus and the saints. So, we have to give due credit to that human power of emotion. There's this, that's the other thing that the gods don't have. They don't have the power of love. They don't have the power of empathy. And it is with the power of our emotions that we create these alternative sort of, positive egregores. So it's yeah, but it's a fact that, I mean, the Christian religion is, it is so deceitful because, all along, and definitely from the council in Nicaea in 325, it was obviously an imperial agenda. And, what it did around Western Europe and what it did to annihilate all the pre-existing nature-based
yeah, and then
beliefs.
they built the
I don't want to call
churches
them religions.
exactly on the same places where you had the pagans built something that was important to them. A lot of churches are standing these days exactly on the same place.
Of course, it's because, well, like that, it's the pagan places that showed them what were the places of natural power, where there was a particular communication between the forces of earth and the forces of the heavens. So of course they had to tap into that. And the fact is that, some of those churches, when you sit in them for an hour, you do come out refreshed. There is, you've got the good vibes. They're real. So sometimes there will be rituals which will, take them in another direction. But the fact is that, there was what we call power of place. And, this is true across the world, all over the place.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So they were very devious, and they they're usurpers, they're thieves, and they will distort. They will distort the meaning of words, the meanings of concepts. They will, deceit in every possible way. And just going through the catalog, would be, it's so awful and it's so repetitive. It's absolutely boring. But the loss of life at all sorts of levels, and the trauma, there again, it's the overall traumatization of us and of our environment, but of us both individually and collectively. And we've been carrying that trauma lifetime after lifetime.
Yeah, and that is what, some people tell me, yeah, it's not possible for thousands of years to have this, let's say, this so-called conspiracy, that it flows throughout history uninterrupted. And yeah, but they usually forget the priesthoods. And that is the mechanism,
Yeah.
how they do it.
That's the mechanism. And the fact is that, the trauma that was experienced by humankind, let's say 3,000 years ago, that was not resolved, it's never been resolved since. It carries on in your own future incarnations and in your descendants. So it works both at the level of DNA and at the level of, your soul's journey from lifetime to lifetime. And, if people don't want to acknowledge that, well, they're blinding themselves. Because, and the fact is that the priesthoods, they'll change. It'll be a different god. It'll be a different ritual. There will be different formalities. But you need to be able to spot the same red line, the same sort of thread of Ariana that is going through all of these things.
Yeah.
And once you can accept the fact your soul has been traumatized century after century, millennia after millennia, then you can start addressing the trauma.
Yeah.
Which is not all that, it's not so difficult.
Yeah. That's the same thing with everything. Let's say you have some type of really, really bad addiction. First step is to acknowledge it. Yeah. There's no way around it. As long as you are in denial and you think your 2 bottles of wine a day are no problem, although you already woke up on in the garden in your own vomit because you blacked out, as long as you tell yourself, no, it's not a problem because it's not an occurrence that happens every day. Yeah.
But those are the mind games. In alcoholics, the mind games are so powerful. They're going to be very virtuous after they've recovered from, the latest really, really bad hangover and, lying with your face down in your vomit. Then they're going to be very good for 2 days and they're going to say, yes, I need to get rid of this problem. But then, as soon as that little demon starts tickling, the little itch, they'll go right back into it, and they will give themselves reasons to go back into it, all the good reasons that they need. People, this is what I call the programming of the mind, which is, in fact, a kind of demonic possession that we all have of an inner, we've internalized the victimizer. We've internalized the addiction. An addiction, basically, it's a vampire inside us, or certain ways of thinking in a very set way without any kind of flexibility. There again, these are other dimensional entities that sit inside our mind and our emotions and our subconscious, what have you. They have their different places. There are lots of places for them to find a home inside us. And they're very, 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 very good at using our human language and the language of our emotions to make us do what they want us to do. We've internalized this. But we've internalized it so much that we cannot see it. It's when we can, okay, admit that we have whatever problem, whatever, demon, and to call it a demon, to agree that, okay, there's some little part of me or big part of me that is possessed by something else. Okay, now I'm going to start training myself to spot it, because it's not working on me all the time. I have to train myself to sniff it when it's coming. There are these regular patterns that we all have in our lives, self-defeating or self-attacking or self-hating or whatever it is. And because they keep recurring as a way for us to, okay, there's something strange about this. And when you can start spotting it, then you can start talking with it and saying, my greater self doesn't want you to be there anymore. Go away. And, it may take several rounds. It may not happen overnight, but you get there eventually. Because fundamentally, we are still who we are.
Yeah, exactly. So what I found also very interesting when I started reading your book, that you said in the galaxy there are many watching us now, meaning they think if humans can free themselves, we can do it as well. So where did that thought come from? And what is the evidence for that?
Well, I mean, the evidence comes from, it's mainly remote viewers, as well as, contactees, which I'm neither of those, but it fits with what information, I don't like that word, but still, that I get in contemplation. There is we are not just one isolated planet in one corner of the galaxy. What we do here, because as humans we are very unique beings, in the population of the cosmos, we are very unique beings who are basically of cosmic origin, and who, that's the other thing that my esoteric Bengali people taught me, and which I feel profoundly to be very true. They say it's not just as above, so below. They say everything that is in the universe is in the human. So we are a condensation of everything that's in the universe, which means that, of course, you're going to have the battle of the gods and the whatever, the conflicts between different whatever galactic systems out there. But my sense, when I look at all the stories that come out of, remote viewers and contactees, is that all those civilizations out there that interact with humans, kidnap them or talk to them or whatever, they're all technologically advanced, and they're all extremely self-similar. They don't have much diversity. Like they're all, more or less like ant civilizations.
Like done with a cookie cutter.
Yes, and when you die, you choose to die, and before you die, you just clone your body, and you'll be able to come back in that same body later. I mean, those technological, be they benevolent or malevolent ETs, they seem to be all very, very sort of standard. They all fit a certain standard, whereas humans are very, very, very diverse. And very diverse in the kind of talents that we have. So those other civilizations, they may be, okay, they've got a mastery of hyperphysics, of, navigating the ethers, and, instantaneous motion from one place to another, and, commanding with your just with your concentration, commanding a vessel, a spacecraft to move around this way and that. But what else? I mean, do they grow beautiful trees, in their planetary systems? I'm not getting any of that information. Do they make beautiful music out there? Do they, I don't get that feeling. And so I have a sense that, they have all acquiesced to the extreme enslavement that humankind has been through for the past several millennia, but also with curiosity to see how, if a little bit of support is sent from out there, whatever, energy from the galactic center or whatever, particles from Jupiter, I don't know, but stuff from out there, subtle stuff or particle stuff or what have you, whether just with a little bit of a nudge, a sufficient number of humans might not wake up to their true nature and make a different choice. And that different choice will ripple out through the whole of the universe and produce different effects for out there. Because, the fact is, according to, remote viewers and contactees, there are benevolent federations of worlds and galaxies and planetary systems out there, and malevolent ones. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. That's what they say.
Yeah.
But no, I don't subscribe to the fact that everything out there is bad.
Mm-hmm.
Because if that is so, then, what the hell do we do when we die, Judith? We go into one of the hells that they organize? No, I'm not buying that.
Yeah. Okay.
And there has to be, there's the whole business of our creativity, which, it's a word that's used and overused in a very kind of nearly utilitarian way nowadays. But there are levels of creativity that we have beyond the physical, that we can have in the subtle realms, that, they've become completely atrophied. They've become sort of ossified. They've gone dormant, but they're there, so there are so many things that we can be creative with and about, that the variety, the diversity of this, I have a sense, does not exist in any other particular civilization out there. From, the little that, I've sampled of what other people have reported about other civilizations. So, I do imagine that there are benevolent or friendly cultures out there that wish us well, and, we might get some kind of support. I'm not counting on it. It's, this is part of the savior program that I'm not buying into. On the other hand, things are accelerating so much nowadays. I think the acceleration is both on the bad side and on the good side, and in the middle side, because that's the other thing. I have a problem with this polarization of good versus evil, which keeps us angry and polarized, and not finding our ability to dissolve that polarization into something that is life-loving, just, joyful further fulfillment of whatever it is that, our further calling as a human race.
Yeah. So, okay, so this is the top of the hour already, and now, believe it or not, I will close down the public hour now, and then we dive into the nitty-gritty, and we see the patrons on the other side.